So you've been at this for 40 years. And
Yes.
so not only do you have experience on the job site, but you are a true court builder. And
Yes.
that's really your background. But one thing that I really want to drill in today with you is on the front end, as guys are coming in as surfacing contractors and installers, it's really important for them to know, okay, what am I putting this color on? And how do I help my customer kind of sure up that their subsurface is good? Or maybe they're hiring me to surface the court, but they're asking me, hey, do you know any good asphalt contractors? There are tons of asphalt contractors, but it's a whole other thing to build courts and to pave courts. Today's
Absolutely.
topic in this episode, I want you to really nerd out on, okay, what is the difference between just hiring a paving company, having them do the same thing they would do for a parking lot versus getting really specific, trying to adhere to these American Sport Builders Association specs. So let's just dive into the process of all things asphalt for courts. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Court Pro podcast, where we encourage and equip you with everything you need to start and grow a thriving court business to fuel your family's vision. Every episode, you'll hear interviews, trainings, and conversations revolving around the hard and soft skills of athletic court construction and surfacing, plus some bonus tips on how to grow as a father as you run your business. My name's Joe, and I'm a husband and father of 4 kids. I was able to bring in $300,000 of revenue in year 1 of my surfacing business and over $1 million in year 2. This business has blessed my family tremendously, and I'm super excited to help you guys, other hardworking dads, create a true economic engine for your own family. If you'd like to learn more about what entering into a season of court business coaching might look like for you, visit courtprocoaching.com to see more details about our exclusive content and community of fellow court installers across the country. Let's jump into today's episode. What's up, guys? I am here with my good friend, Luc Lessard. I've known Luc for a handful of years now, and I always talk about this unfair advantage that I had with this other court builder in our city who really took me under his wing, let me work with him for a season, but then he turned me loose and I was on my own, and I still needed a lot of help. Luc here has been, more than anybody by far, my biggest cheerleader, my coach, and I'm super excited to introduce him to you guys. He's an ex-contractor. I'll let you kind of introduce yourself, a little bit of your background, but as we started the podcast and cranking out these videos, I was like, the one guy I know I need to talk to and introduce everybody to is Luc. So thanks for being here. And yeah, give us a little intro on Luc.
All right. Thanks, Joe. I've been in the industry since 1981. So I started out there with a shovel, mixing and shoveling and working from the bottom up. Became a contractor, worked specifically only in the recreational area. So tennis courts, running tracks, basketball courts. Pickleball courts were really not in that market back then. They've only evolved probably within the last 10 years. My forte in construction was in fencing. We did site work, asphalt, concrete, net posts, and lots of color. I'm familiar with synthetic grasses, a variety of different mat systems. I've worked all over the United States, down south, in the middle, in the Midwest, East Coast. I haven't done much work on the West Coast, but I have a feeling it's very similar to what Florida's like.
Yes.
Hot and humid.
No doubt. Yeah. Well, so that's awesome, Luc. And, for you, you've been at this for 40 years.
Yes.
And so you not only do you have experience on the job site, you really know the difference. And this might be for another podcast, but you are a true court builder.
Yes.
And that's really your background. So, we talk to a lot of guys, and I always encourage guys to think about starting out as court surfacers before they try to take on, general contracting a job, which you helped me with last year. You kind of helped me make that transition. But that's one thing that I really want to drill in today with you is, on the front end, as guys are coming in as surfacing contractors and installers, it's really important for them to know, okay, what am I putting this color on, and how do I help my customer, kind of sure up that their subsurface is good? Or maybe they're hiring me to surface the court, but they're asking me, hey, do you know any good asphalt contractors? There are tons of asphalt contractors, but it's a whole other thing to build courts and to pave courts. So
Absolutely.
Today's
Absolutely.
topic in this episode, I really want to drill into, what are, we can really nerd out. I'm going to ask all the questions, but I want you to really nerd out on, okay, what is the difference between, just hiring a paving company, having them do the same thing they would do for a parking lot versus getting really specific, trying to really, adhere to these American Sport Builders Association specs. So tell us a little bit about your background with asphalt and let's just dive into the process of all things asphalt for courts.
Okay. I think first and foremost, asphalt is a very good surface because of the affordability. It's substantially cheaper than doing a concrete court. Like a post-tension concrete court is going to run you probably, and again, you have to look at your markets depending on where it is, but a 5-inch slab post-tension is going to run you 150 to 180 soup to nuts. I mean, from start to finish with
Yeah.
coatings, standard coatings, no cushion, no anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Got it.
So you go into more of an asphalt core. Well, let me back up a little bit.
Yeah.
Concrete, if you go into a slab with rebar and expansion joints and Joe, those are always pains. The minute you get a saw cut in there.
We'll do a
you know,
whole podcast on saw
Yeah.
cuts and control joints.
So, and that's an engineered flaw, right? So it's
Yeah.
an engineered crack. It's supposed to control everything.
Yeah.
Now you have to deal with all that. So again, that's not cheap. You go into asphalt, now you're cutting the price almost in half. So you're looking at, again, depending on your markets, you're going into Florida. Florida's only putting 2 inches of asphalt down on a court, 4 inches of gravel. You go into the Northeast, you go into the Midwest above the Mason-Dixon line. Now we're talking 12 inches of gravel, 2 inches of base, and 2 inches of surface asphalt.
But why the difference?
Because up north, you have the frost heaves. You have a lot of movement going on. The soils are slightly different as well. Typically, Florida tends to be either sandy or swampy. So you're not dealing with as, and I don't want to say swampy, but it's that the soil can be stabilized with their mixes. They have a lot of limestone, absorbs a lot of that water, solidifies, and you don't need as thick of a coat. You don't see the cold. You don't see the frost heaves. You
Right.
travel up north, probably Northern Virginia up, you're starting to see, more movement. So you might increase your base to 6 to 8 inches of gravel. You come up into New England, you go up into Wisconsin, Michigan, you're looking for 12 inches of base. You go up into Canada, you're probably looking 16, 18 inches of base.
Goodness gracious.
And you got to pay attention because a lot of times you'll run into stone. Okay. So your aggregate, you got to be careful with. You're not putting straight stone. You're putting a blend. You're a processed aggregate. Typically it has stone dust and stone in it. That's a mix and that solidifies. You want it to drain, but you want it to pack. You're looking for a nice hard pack. Be very careful. You don't want to use a clay base. If you see in parts of Pennsylvania, Virginia, even in parts of Ohio, there's a lot of red clay. Well, red clay, when it's hard pan, it is hard as a rock. I mean, it is solid. Introduce water into it, it becomes jello. You get
Wow.
movement.
Yeah.
So you go to compact it, all of a sudden you have
Movement.
movement on the asphalt.
Yeah.
Not good.
Yeah.
You can't get the true compaction on that.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so if I am a court surfacer and I'm trying to help my customer, right? So maybe they call me and they're, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just getting started. I don't really do concrete or asphalt, but I do have some options that you could call these guys. Like, what am I as a surfacer looking for in an asphalt contractor? Make sure that they're not just going to treat it like it's another driveway or another parking lot. What's the difference? What am I looking for in the contractor? How can I coach, even if they're new? Maybe it's like a great asphalt contractor who's trying to get a little bit more niched. They're tired of competing on every single parking lot in the city. And they're like, man, we want to niche down into courts maybe. How can I as a surfacer coach them in how they need to approach paving a court?
The biggest focus is knowing the base. Okay. So make sure that your base has been graded properly. It's a 1% pitch. There's no such thing as a crowning on any court whatsoever.
Yeah. So talk about what crowning is. What is
Crowning
that?
is typically where you would say, I'm going to go with a tennis court only because it's easier.
Sure.
At the net, it would be your 0 point. And then what you'd have is you'd have it pitched both ways, 6 inches. So 1% both ways because a court is 120. So you do 60 feet, an inch and 10,
Right.
typically. If you were to dial it into your laser, you're going to be dialing 0.8333 or 0.84 to get your pitch.
Sure.
Okay. You do not do it that way.
We don't want the pad to do this.
Right.
We want
Exactly.
the pad to go in one direction all
Yeah.
the way.
Single plane, directional plane.
Yeah.
It's a pitched plane so that the plane has to go. It can be corner to corner. That's fine. Or end to end, side to side, whenever works. Now, if you're doing, I typically like to run it the 120 way, only because I want the water to flow down.
Yes.
So,
A longer distance.
yes. And you never, you don't want your pitch, you never pave across your pitch, because that's where you might have a chance of having it be higher.
So we ran into that problem last year.
Yeah.
So if your pad is pitching one direction, you want to make sure you're paving with the grade.
Yes.
Talk about seams.
So seams, you're putting it down typically in two applications. Your first application, you will run typically 10-foot passes. Your second application, you'll run 12s because you want to scatter your seams. You don't want your seams to sit on top.
You don't
of
want to
each
put
other.
the same seam over the first one.
Right. You never want that. First of all, you tend to be higher. You'll have a little bit of an edge because it's tough to get your seam all the way down. You know what I mean? But you want to make sure if you scatter it, you'll hide that first seam. Now, you may run into larger projects, like a battery of say 6 quarts. Well, they'll want you to basket weave or crisscross. So they'll tell you the first application go across the pitch, don't go with the pitch, and the second application go with the pitch.
What's the advantage of basket weaving on a bigger pad like that?
It's supposed to be stronger and hold the asphalt, less cracking, less movement of the pad.
Right. But even if you're going to basket weave, it sounds like the surface course you want to make sure is running with the pitch.
Yes, absolutely. It has to be running with the pitch.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. So that's one thing. So, if I'm trying to consult an asphalt contractor, what else can I tell them? So,
You want them to know how to grade properly. They need to have a laser grader. If you set it up with a laser grader and you can get the skid steer with the attachment, you can go old school and go string lines. We still see people doing that, and there's nothing wrong with that. That works. But if you have your grade really good, you essentially go back with your paver. You set your 2-inch blocks, you drop your screed on it, feed your paver, and you can essentially just go right down the line and just run with what the grade is. There shouldn't be any low areas, because if you're not playing with your screws on your paver, you're just going right down the line, and it makes it nice and clean.
tell me a little bit about the asphalt itself. So one thing that we run into on the surfacing side a lot is we get these rust looking spots. It's whoa, we just painted this, and our customers calling us hey, why are these brown spots? Looks like rust. Tell us a little bit about that and what's going on with the asphalt there.
Okay. That's pyrite, and pyrite it's typically an iron ore that it's usually in the stone. And that stone, as it starts getting water on it, it's going to, rust. I do want to make a point of saying, when your base coat, you can do standard asphalt.
Okay.
When you go to your finish, you want to ask your paver to do a virgin asphalt. You don't want any recycled asphalt materials in it. It's hard because EPA now has a certain stipulation where you have to have a minimum of 5%. The Long Island, it can be as high, depending on the areas, as high as 55, 60%.
They want you to recycle for the environment. Yeah.
So we're hoping that, with that top layer, if you can ask for virgin. If you don't, you always have to have a 30-day cure, no matter what. So I would suggest just give it the 30 days, let it breathe, let it bleed out.
Can I ask you some questions about the curing? Because we're always trying to figure out, okay, we know that it's supposed to, we hear guys like you tell us, make sure it cures. What is actually chemically going on, and why are we waiting 30 days? Because you can walk on asphalt the next day. What's to stop us from actually surfacing it sooner?
You're letting it breathe, right? You're trying to get the oils out. You're trying to let all the gases out, because the best thing that can happen for a core is to get a rainstorm that can really wash things. A heavy rain, and then some good hot weather to really pull everything out. Once you have that, if you've ever taken new asphalt, you take a bucket of water and you throw it on there, you'll see like
It's oil and water.
pebbles and you can see the color on it. Well,
Yeah.
acrylics don't want to bond to that. So they're
Right.
likely, I mean, they will to some extent, but if it's heavy, you could get shatter cracking or you could get delamination or blistering.
But yeah, we're putting water in our acrylic paint,
Right.
and we're putting it. Those oils aren't, haven't released and then been washed away. Then yeah, you could have a real problem. So what is there? I know in the past it's been recommended to me to like actually if you're in the middle of the summer, it might actually be a good idea to get some water, like introduce water to the pad. Is
Yeah,
that
a lot of times you can do that in two ways. A lot of people will get excited because they really want to push the project, so they'll power wash. A lot of other people will just toss sprinklers on there in a variety of different areas, let the water go on there. But then at the same time, they're looking for puddles. They're looking for
Right.
low
Yeah.
areas.
Yes.
So you can highlight an area. So then
Right.
you can see what's going on.
That's good. So you get to kind of double dip by throwing water on there, see
The-
where the water spots are, and get the pad clean.
Yep. The old school way back when, back in the 80s, we used to actually, believe it or not, we used to spread lime with a spreader, like a lawn spreader, used to spread lime on it and then wash it off.
Wow.
And that would pull out some of the oils out of it. Now, is it costly? Absolutely. Is it guaranteed? Not necessarily, because now you could be infecting your asphalt
Right.
with lime. So
Yeah,
then
that
you
sounds a
could
little
have
dicey.
some other issues.
Okay. Very cool. All right. So I'm sure this has happened many times to you, but what are some watch outs for contractors when they go to look at an asphalt pad? Maybe they've been hired to just come in and do the surfacing. They had the surfacing contractor had nothing to do with, had no communication with the paver. What are some watch outs when they walk out onto the court? What are some potential problems they could face as a surfacer? And anything along those lines. What should they be looking at that could cause problems for them as they start to surface the asphalt?
Well, what you want to look at is I like going there after a rain. One is to see the puddles. Two is also to see the roller marks. Okay. So as the asphalt guy is rolling, they might just be rolling fast,
Yeah.
So you'll start seeing roller marks, especially when the water. Well, when you cover your court, you're still going to see that because the acrylics are simply, they're not going to, hide
That's a good
anything.
thing.
It's just coloring those watermarks. But it's also dangerous because those roller marks could leave heavy spots. And that's where you can, with your squeegee, you can try to work it, but sometimes it'll pool there and that'll cause some issues. So you want to be careful with roller marks. You want to be careful to see if you see cracking on a new asphalt, you want to look at that and you want to go stand on it, see if it's spongy. Is the base suitable? Is it not? Is it, like, for instance, one of if they've I know that people say you can't overcompact asphalt. That's not true. You can. You'll get these cracks and you'll be like, oh, geez, sometimes you can patch that, but you just want to be aware of it and make the owner, the end user, aware, like, hey, this is what's going on, but we want you to see what we're seeing. So make them aware of what's there.
Yes. Now, if you go out to surface a court, you're all excited. You're like, I landed the job. Oh yeah, they finally paved it. We're going to get to go in 30 days. You go out there to check the work and there's just an unimaginable amount of low spots where the asphalt is, the seams are terrible. How do you deal with that as a surfacer? I'm curious what your take is on this. If there's a lot of low spots, one temptation for a surfacer might be, hey, here's a problem. I could maybe fix it.
Yeah.
So, and I've read it. I've done this. I've learned my lesson. You know what project I'm talking about.
Yes, I do.
And you go out there and you're like, okay, hey, like the customer's got a real problem. They're going to have tons of standing water to where the acrylic's going to bubble because it's just constantly sitting in water.
Yep.
So I need to get ahead of this. I need to offer a solution to them. I'm going to go ahead and introduce a concrete patch to, 50 spots or something like that. But then what happens if you just you end up just moving those 50 spots to a slightly different spot and it pulls there? Like, what do you do? Should you attempt to help the customer by patching some of them? If you try to put it back on the asphalt contractor, what is that look like? How would they even fix it apart from coming in and paving over it?
Well, a lot of times they'll use infrared and they'll be able to do an infrared patch, depending on how well the asphalt is. I mean,
What
if
is
it's
what
fairly,
is an infrared patch?
they come in there, it's essentially like a torch. It looks like I mean, it's not a torch, but it's like it looks like a flat plate and it's got a flame underneath it. And what they do is they heat up the asphalt. They usually get a fine mix of asphalt. And what they'll do is they'll spread that on to try and rake it in and roll it and they're reheating the asphalt. They're trying to rebind it all and fix those areas. How does it work? I think it's a 50-50 hit. Sometimes you'll get a really nice patch and they'll be able to get it. And other times it'll granulate. It just
Well,
won't.
yeah, that was our experience on some of these. Is it'll granulate and get real chunky, or they'll actually overfill,
Yeah.
get a ridge over
Yeah.
top.
High spot. So typically what we would do is we would make the end user aware, like, hey, there are some areas we can do. We're not going to remove these areas. We can't fix these areas. So what we're going to do is the deeper ones, we're going to greatly reduce the depth to under a nickel, the depth of a nickel, sideways, US nickel sideways, laying flat. And we're going to meet the spec of USTA and ASBA. We're going to meet their spec and it'll greatly reduce the puddle so that it dries faster.
Right.
And you can get,
It's really important. Like I've learned to use language in my quotes and even just interactions with a customer. That phrase, lessening the depth.
Yeah.
We are not fixing.
Right.
Like you really want to make sure that you're not saying we're going to fix the problem and make it
No.
completely severe. You got to be really careful not to shoot yourself in the foot with that. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. We will greatly reduce the depth of the affected area.
Yes. That's really good.
worked well for me.
That's awesome. Well, we've got just a couple minutes left on this one, Luke. Can we shift to concrete real quick?
Yep.
Can we talk about the difference between the two surfaces? With concrete, you've got a similar cure time where you already mentioned that it is more expensive. One of the pros of concrete is that it is stronger. It will crumble. The type of cracking is going to be a little bit more hairline as opposed to some of the alligator cracking that you see in asphalt. It is actually easier in a lot of ways to maintain. What would you say as far as acrylics on top of concrete? What are some of the things that we need to think about when we're surfacing a concrete court?
First question to ask, is there a vapor barrier?
Yes, always. That should be like on your t-shirt. When
Yeah,
you
so it really, use this card. Here you go. Is there a vapor barrier?
Yes.
That's probably the most important thing. Our recommendation is a double 6 mil taped seams. We want to make sure it's nice and tight. A 30-day cure, medium to light broom finish, and when we're looking at post tension is by far one of the best ways to go. It's a bridge deck. It's never going to go anywhere. You may get a little bit of hairlines, whatever.
That's the Cadillac foundation. Yeah.
It's just an amazing all around court.
Now there's really just a couple additional steps when you're surfacing a concrete court. So you really need to acid etch and you need to prime. We've been talking about this a lot this week, actually. What is actually happening when you acid etch a concrete court? Why do we do it? And what's actually happening that makes it better for coatings to adhere?
The acid is really removing the debris from the pores. So it's removing the dust, the debris from the pores themselves. So by acid etching and then washing the acid off, if you notice when you acid etch, you'll see bubbling.
Yeah.
It's like a cleaning, probably the easiest way to explain it. It's kind of cleaning. It's making you go. Take a soft broom. You don't have to have a super stiff broom. You can just use a regular broom, sweep it in there, and don't be afraid to apply it generously.
Be liberal with it. Yeah.
And then wash it off. Like I do 20 by 20 squares. And, that's how I like to do it. And then we wash it all off and make sure it's nice and clean. Then that's the whole purpose behind the acid etching. Now, if you want to, after you're done cleaning it, give it a couple of days of nice warm temps. You can get a moisture meter, or you can do my technique, which is, a sandwich bag with duct tape around it. Give it 20 minutes in the sun. You'll be able to tell if you have condensation on that bag, it's not ready. If it's dry, it's ready.
I get super nervous. I'll do the bag test and it might pass the bag test, but I always almost wait till the next day to put my primer down.
It's probably a good idea. And then, like you said, so you have your acid etching, you have your wash on the court, you have your primer, which you typically would do. You're looking to get a good bond. You're looking to get that primer into those pores so that it's secured. It's very important to know that it's not, even though it's a good bonding and it's trying to stop the water from traveling, It's not a vapor barrier. So there's no such thing. I know there's people telling you that there's vapor barrier, topside vapor barriers.
Right.
I don't believe that there's really such a thing. I think that they're acrylic adhesive promoters. They're promoters. They help promote the acrylics to it. But
On the
as
top
far as,
side, yeah.
yeah,
Right.
as far as stopping moisture from traveling, water's super strong.
Yeah.
Hydrostatic pressure will push.
Yeah.
And then you can just go to your standard coatings. You go to your, but I will tell you this, with concrete, the more coatings you put on top of it, the more likely you have to worry about, because you're sealing that concrete off,
Right.
the more likely you could see,
Get bubbling.
issues, blistering
Yep.
and bubbling.
Right. You're trapping that in there.
Yeah.
Yep. Really good. Awesome, Luke. Well, we could go on and on about asphalt and concrete. I know you certainly could. And maybe we will. Maybe we'll come back to another one. But this was great. Thank you so much. I don't know anybody better to consult on this. You've been super helpful. In fact, if there's anybody out there that has these questions, I know you'd be happy to help them.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And can you tell us a little bit about what you have going on? What's your day-to-day right now? We work with you all the time, use your products. Give us a quick pitch on what you got going on.
All right. So I work for Nyra Industries. I run our sports division, our recreational division, which is called DynaFlex Sports Surfacing, where we have coatings designed for recreational facilities and surfaces. Right now, what's really exciting is we're working on Grizzly Court, which is a mat system, a free-floating mat system designed specifically for troublematic courts. So a court that doesn't have a vapor barrier underneath it, I got a solution for you. And cracks, we've got solutions. Rooftops, we've got solutions. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah. So if you guys didn't catch that, Luke is the director of DynaFlex, which is the sports surfacing division of Nyra. And we'll put all that in the show notes and the description under this video. But thanks again, Luke. We'll do another one on mat systems here soon.
Sounds great. Thanks, Joe.
Awesome.
Take care.
Well, guys, thanks for listening to today's episode. If you'd like to learn more about Court Pro coaching or discover what a season of coaching might look like for you, visit courtprocoaching.com. We'll see you for the next episode.